There's different categories in cycling. I'll focus just on the domestic USA. You've got a pro category, and then you've got 5 subcategories. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is your beginner, and then it moves forward up to Cat 1. Cat 1 is what I am presently. That is your elite amateurs. It's a national level racing license. Many of the pro races in the United States you're able to enter, unless it's a pro invite only or some other race like that, US Nationals. But most of the races in the United States usually have a consideration for licensed Cat 1. So I've been a licensed Cat 1 for over 20 years. I've competed across the United States from large criterium races, which are short circuit races, 75 minutes, 90 minutes, what have you, all the way to large multi-day stage races out west. I was lucky enough to do the Tour of Utah in the very beginning of that race's history in the Pro 1 category. I've done races in California like San Dimas, Redlands, big races like that. And then in the Texas, Arkansas area, Joe Martin is a big stage race that everyone does, big pro stage race. That's actually the biggest pro stage race I've ever done. It was 213 guys back many years ago, 20 years ago in the pro category. So lots of fun experiences. Today, now I'm mostly a masters racer, so I'm an old man class racer. A bunch of the old fast guys that just mix it up on the weekends and prefer to protect our skin more than picking up a place or two in the final left-hand turn in a crit. There's a great little mountain bike park that I've ridden. It's in Adrian, Michigan, actually, but there's a great little mountain bike park there. But there's a number of different routes that I like going between Adrian and Brooklyn, or Brooklyn and Jackson. There's so many different routes, and that's like one of the most fun things about it. You're not stuck on a standard pattern. There's enough cut throughs and variations in it that you can pick your favorite little hills and go by your favorite lakes and have your sections on some of these open roads that have these huge 5-foot, 6-foot shoulders that are just perfectly maintained without a bunch of debris all over them. You can add those and incorporate those in, but you've got the variety to make it a unique ride almost every time. So really just kind of playing in between Brooklyn and the Adrian side, or Brooklyn and the Jackson side. There's just a ton of different routes that are all fun. So it just kind of depends on what you're looking to do. Most of us only have time to get an hour or two of bike ride in. So it's somewhere between a 20 and 45 mile ride. And so the amount of combinations that exist are almost infinite on what that ride looks like. So you can really build a new ride almost every time you go out, and it's super fun. What brought me to Michigan in general is real estate. So over the last 20 years, I got into real estate and kept riding my bike. Once I got into this part of the country, it became pretty clear I could actually have my passion for work as well as my passion for cycling and blend them together. So when I come to markets, especially when I started coming to southern Michigan, I always take a mountain bike, road bike with me, sometimes a gravel bike with me, and I can explore the areas, explore the regions. And so when I first started doing real estate in this part of the state, I was actually in Adrian, Michigan, which is about 45 minutes away from here. But I would ride to Brooklyn, I'd ride past Brooklyn. I've actually ridden almost to Jackson and back. I haven't done that quite yet, but that's forthcoming. And along the way, what you realize is just how beautiful this place is and how conducive it is to cycling. So when I first started cycling back in the late 90s, yes, I'm almost 50, you worried about people on the roads, but people were more mindful of cyclists and what was going on. You didn't have all the distractions of modern technology, be it phones or navigation systems and all these types of entertainment systems. And so as time has gone on, I've lost a number of friends by getting hit by cars. So when you come to these parts of the country, you're so much more mindful of the traffic flow, how big the shoulders are, the quality of the roads, the quality of the less traveled roads, like the tremendous amount of gravel roads that this part of the state has and how beautifully maintained they are. And so you just start to look for more of those things. So over the last few years, as I started doing projects in this part of the state, I've had the opportunity to ride a tremendous amount of the roads here, and they're fabulous. I mean, I've been able to ride and do a lot of riding back in Arkansas. I'm doing some real estate projects there. I do Rule of 3 every year, which is a big gravel race that they do in Bentonville, Arkansas. And so I know some of the best places in the country. I used to live in Salt Lake City. I've ridden much of what they have there. This part of the state holds up. It really does. There's a lot of value and what is here on the ground and how the roads are maintained and how the gravel roads are maintained, and then how the traffic patterns work and all of that. I mean, I've gone on 50, 60-mile rides and barely even seen cars, you know, and we're talking not in the middle of the day. We're talking in high traffic times of day, the 4, 5, 6, 7 o'clock PMs in the summertime. And so you have the ability in this part of the country to ride in a very safe way, put in large volume, see beautiful countryside, the rolling hills of the Irish Hills. You've got all the lakes, you've got all the beautiful neighborhoods that are off the lakes, you've got all these small, awesome lake communities that just dot the terrain everywhere. So you can go ride for, 15, 20 miles, stop, grab a cup of coffee, turn around, head back to where you started. Or you could go from like city to town to town to town to town. And along the way, you're riding on these very low traveled, low trafficked roads. And so it's just a really beautiful place to have a really high quality cycling experience and really have a high quality cycling lifestyle. And then on top of all of that, it's really affordable. Like unlike Bentonville, which is a lovely place, I adore it, houses there are $500, $600, $700 a square foot or more, depending on which part of town you're in. You can buy a beautiful home here for $150, $200, $250, $300 a square foot, depending on where you're at. So when you look at the value proposition of what this area of Michigan specifically offers cycling people like myself, I refer to myself as a cycling nerd, especially at this phase of my cycling life, which is I'm just an older guy who enjoys being fit and healthy and getting out in the wind and getting out on the road or on the trail. This is a really beautiful place to live, and it's really a great place to visit. Right now at present, I live in Dayton, Ohio. Dayton, Ohio is where Rails to Trails started, is what I'm told. So I'm just gonna run with it. And it was started by one of the Huffman family members, and Huffman family started Huffy Bikes. And Huffy Bikes is still out of Dayton, Ohio. So back in the 70s, one of the Huffman family members decided they wanted to take these abandoned railway lines and convert them to bike paths. So Dayton itself, as a metropolitan area, has over 300 miles of bike lanes, or bike trails, I should say more specifically. They're wonderful. For like fitness, they're great. And if you live in certain parts of town, they're good for transportation and commuting. But that original vision didn't really have cycling as a form of transportation in the cards. And so when you look at a city like Bentonville has been laid out to have all the entertainment, fun lifestyle stuff, right? So riding your mountain bikes, doing gravel bikes, all those things, but they are committed to cycling as a quality, legitimate form of transportation. And so they actually have a very solid infrastructure on their public roads that jumps in and ties in and out of their trail system. Truly, if you wanted to not have a car, you could do that there. And the type of people and talent that they're attracting as a consequence of creating that lifestyle, it's pretty amazing. So Walmart decided that they wanted to de-regionalize a lot of their administration and management. So they expanded and built a brand new world headquarters. It's about 350 acres. I believe they spent $1.2 billion on it. They're moving 15,000 people to a market of 54,000 people. And they knew that in order to do that, retain the talent they already have and attract the talent they're looking for and wanting to bring to that new facility, that new headquarters, they needed to create a community and environment that was conducive to that type of talent. So they had a long-term strategy for this. So even before they started building that large facility that I mentioned, they were already making these large capital and infrastructural investments into their rivers, their lakes, all of those things. And then also the bike trails, the transportation systems, all of those things. It was a 15, 20-year plan, right? So now they're getting to the backside of that, and it's paying tremendous dividends because people are now moving there for that lifestyle. And then Walmart has the access to those people, right? Jackson has, and this part of the state in general, has the opportunity to do that. We just got to think a little bit further ahead. We can't think, 2 years, 5 years, 15 years. It really needs to be a 20-year plan. And I know there's a number of different community leaders and stakeholders that are working on that concept. And it's critical because I've seen that work in the town that I grew up in, which is Tulsa, Oklahoma. They created a plan called Vision 2025. And in that plan, they laid out a regional approach that was going to create all these lifestyle pieces, but also have dollars for building the critical infrastructure and all the different things that these different municipalities within that region would need in order to attract and retain the people that they were looking to attract and retain. And as a consequence, 20 years later, actually a couple more years than that, about 22, 23 years later, after they passed the first Vision 2025, Tulsa's one of the coolest places in the country to live. And they also have one of the coolest bicycle communities in the country. And I got to be there on the front end of that. And a lot of the people that were doing that work are dear friends of mine. We're looking to bring some of that intellectual horsepower into some of these concepts and things that we're trying to seed here in the Irish Hills and Jackson specifically. So to get back to the original question, I think it's critical to not just have the lifestyle piece, but have like a transportation connectivity piece, because it's going to make this community relevant to the type of talent they're looking to attract and retain here. We're super close to Lake Erie. You're an hour and 10 minutes away from DTW, which is a direct flight to Salt Lake City. In 3 hours and 45 minutes, I can be in Salt Lake City. And that's some of the best skiing in the world, right? So like your juxtaposition to markets by a car is phenomenal. Within about probably a 10 or 11 hour drive of here, maybe depends on how you play with that, you're within about almost 55% of the US population. You go 2 hours south of here, you're 60% of the US population. So from a work kind of adventure standpoint, like you can live here on the day-to-day, live a wonderful life. You've got access to amazing lakes, the Great Lakes, skiing up north of here, just a couple hours north, you can go skiing. You go further north up into the UP, you've got snowmobiling, world-class hunting, water sports. I mean, anything that you could ever think of outdoors-wise, fishing, white sand beaches, crystal clear water. I mean, Torch Lake is one of the most amazing places I've seen, Charlevoix, Traverse City. I mean, all of those places are just so lovely, and I'm just naming a handful of the places here. It's a wonderful place to be, and then it's also a wonderful place to use as a launch pad to go anywhere else that you want to adventure. And there are so many wonderful places to go see and experience that are just a day's drive or less away from here, or a short direct flight, because you have, a world-class airport, an hour and change away.